After losing everything, her business, her money, her marriage, Marissa's life spiraled into decline. With nowhere to go, she ended up on the streets, wandering from one precarious place to another in search of shelter and food. "I never thought I could end up like this," she lamented, as she walked the frigid sidewalks, wrapped in rags. "I was such a powerful, respected woman. And now look at me, a beggar asking for scraps." Marissa tried to make ends meet however she could, taking odd jobs and asking for handouts, but the money was never enough. She could barely afford to feed herself, let alone pay for a place to stay. Many nights, Marissa was forced to sleep on park benches or under awnings, cold and hungry. "My children must hate me, they must think I abandoned them," she thought, tears in her eyes. But in truth, Marissa had completely lost contact with her family. Her ex-husband had estranged her from her children during the divorce, and without means of communication, she had no way to find them. Alone and helpless, Marissa lived day to day, fighting to survive. Her already fragile health deteriorated further with each day spent on the streets. "I feel so tired, so fragile. Will I die here, alone and forgotten by all?" Despite all the pain and humiliation, Marissa never lost hope. She knew her life couldn't end this way. With the little strength she had left, she rose each morning, determined to find a way to start over. Marissa looked with a touch of timidity at the imposing facade of the restaurant before her. She knew she didn't belong in that place, with its elegantly dressed patrons and its atmosphere of luxury and refinement. But the cold of the night was freezing her bones, and her body begged for a little shelter. "I'll just go in for a few minutes," she thought to herself, gathering all her courage. "Maybe I can sit and warm up a bit before going back to the street." With hesitant steps, Marissa pushed open the heavy entrance door and stepped into the restaurant. Immediately, she felt out of place, her worn and dirty clothes contrasting with the refined environment around her. She lowered her head, avoiding direct eye contact with the people. "Come on, Marissa, you just need a few minutes of rest," she mentally encouraged herself as she looked for a discreet corner to sit. But as soon as she settled into a chair, she felt the curious and judgmental stares of the other patrons upon her. "Look, there's a beggar in here," whispered an elegantly dressed woman to her companion, eyeing Marissa with disdain. "What on earth is that poor thing doing in this place?" commented a tall man in a dark suit, shaking his head disapprovingly. Marissa shrank in her chair, feeling smaller with each scathing look and cruel comment. Her shame and humiliation grew by the second, but she forced herself to stay, fighting the urge to simply run out of that place. "I need to stay here at least a little longer," she whispered to herself, clutching her trembling hands in her lap. Just a few more minutes of warmth and rest. As soon as Marissa settled into a discreet chair, the looks and whispers of the patrons began to turn in her direction. She could feel the atmosphere of judgment and disdain hanging over her. "Look, there's a beggar in here," exclaimed a woman with an air of superiority, nudging her companion. "What on earth does that poor thing think it's doing?" A man in a dark suit, seated a few tables away, frowned as he saw Marissa. "These people have no shame," he grumbled, shaking his head in disapproval. "This place is not for vagrants." Marissa shrank even further into her chair, keeping her head down, trying to ignore the scathing looks and cruel comments. She knew she didn't belong in that environment, but she just wanted a little rest and warmth. Among the patrons, a middle-aged man caught Marissa's attention. He seemed familiar, but she couldn't quite place him. The man stared at her with a puzzled expression, his eyes narrowed as if trying to remember something. "Hey, you there, what do you think you're doing here?" He addressed Marissa, his voice dripping with disdain. "This place is not for people like you. Why don't you go back to the street where you came from? Marissa felt her heart race, her face burning with shame. She wanted to disappear from there. She couldn't stand those looks and cruel comments anymore. But at the same time, her legs seemed unwilling to move. She just wanted a little shelter, even if it was for just a few minutes. Please, she murmured timidly, I just need to sit for a moment. I'll be leaving soon. But her words seemed to only incite more negative reactions from the patrons around her. The noise and commotion caused by Marissa's presence in the restaurant soon caught the attention of the manager, a man with an air of authority and self-confidence. What's going on here? He asked, approaching the elderly woman with a disapproving look. Who let this beggar in here? The patrons quickly fell silent, all eyes turning toward the manager, eagerly awaiting his reaction. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but this is not a place for people like you, he said to Marissa in a condescending tone. I must ask you to leave immediately. We cannot have beggars disturbing our customers. Marissa raised her gaze, meeting the cold, unyielding eyes of the manager. She shrank even further into her chair, her face red with shame and humiliation. Please, sir, she pleaded, her voice trembling. I just need a few minutes to warm up. I'll be leaving soon, I promise. But the manager didn't seem the least bit moved by her plea. He crossed his arms over his chest, his expression even more rigid. No, ma'am. We cannot have people like you disturbing our respectable customers. Now, please do me the favor of leaving, before I call security. Some of the closest patrons smiled, clearly satisfied with the manager's intervention. They seemed relieved to see this intruder being expelled from the premises. Marissa felt a wave of desperation and helplessness overcome her. She didn't want to cause any trouble, she just wanted a little shelter and rest. But now, faced with the manager's unyielding order, she didn't know what to do. Marissa felt her heart beating faster in the face of the manager's relentless command. She knew she didn't belong in that luxurious place, but her body begged for a little rest and warmth. She couldn't just leave and go back out to the cold, dark street. Please, sir, she pleaded, her voice trembling. I just need to sit for a few minutes. I promise I won't bother anyone. The manager looked at her with disdain, clearly unmoved by Marissa's pleas. No, ma'am. We cannot have beggars disturbing our respectable customers. Now, please do me the favor of leaving, before I call security. Some of the nearby patrons smiled, satisfied with the manager's intervention. Marissa could feel the judgmental stares on her, the humiliation burning on her face. But, surprisingly, Marissa did not move from her chair. She raised her chin, looking the manager straight in the eye with determination. No, I'm not leaving, she said, with an unexpected firmness in her voice. I just need a few minutes to warm up. I'm not bothering anyone. The manager was dumbfounded, clearly not expecting this resistance. He looked around, seeing the customers observing the scene with curiosity. Look here, you beggar, he said, his voice laced with irritation. You are disturbing our customers. If you don't leave now, I'll call the police. Marissa was unfazed. She crossed her arms over her chest, staring down the manager defiantly. I'm not going anywhere, she stated firmly. I just want to sit here for a few minutes. I've already told you I'm not bothering anyone. The tension in the air was palpable. The customers watched the scene with a mixture of shock and entertainment. No one was prepared for this unexpected resistance from the disheveled old woman. Marissa's refusal to leave the restaurant quickly provoked a hostile reaction from some of the more aggressive patrons. Hey, you bitch! Shouted a tall, burly man, rising from his chair. The manager told you to get out. Why don't you just disappear from here? Marissa shrank in her chair, but did not back down. I just need a few minutes to warm up. I'm not bothering anyone, she pleaded, her voice trembling. Another patron, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, approached Marissa, his face contorted in anger. Look here, you filthy old hag. This place is not for people like you. Get out of here while I'm still calm. He grabbed Marissa's arm, trying to pull her from the chair. She struggled, her expression frightened. Let go of me. Please, I just want to sit here for a few minutes, she begged, but the man continued to force her. At that moment, another patron, a middle-aged man with familiar features, approached with a contorted face of fury. What's going on here? He bellowed. Who do you think you are to disturb my customers, you beggar? Marissa looked at him, her eyes wide. That face seemed strangely familiar to her, but she couldn't quite place who he was. Please, sir, I don't want to cause any trouble, she pleaded, her body trembling. I just need a few minutes of rest. I'll be leaving soon, I swear. But the man didn't seem willing to listen to her. He grabbed her by the arm, trying to yank her up by force. Get out of here now, you bitch. He yelled, his face red with rage. This restaurant is mine, and I won't tolerate the presence of beggars like you. The scene was causing a commotion in the restaurant, with the customers watching in shock and some even applauding the man's aggression. Marissa struggled, trying to break free, but her fragile resistance seemed to have no effect. The tense and chaotic atmosphere had taken over the place, leaving all present nervous and uncomfortable. No one seemed to know how to intervene or how to resolve the confusion that had settled in. Amidst the tumult and raised voices, the man who was trying to force Marissa out of the restaurant suddenly stopped, his eyes widening as he finally recognized the familiar face. Mother! He exclaimed, releasing Marissa's arm and taking a few steps back, the shock etched on his face. Marissa raised her head, looking at the man with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Those features seemed so familiar to her, but she couldn't believe this could be her own son. Felipe. Is that you? She murmured, her voice trembling. Felipe, Marissa's son, was paralyzed, his expression of rage giving way to profound consternation. He stared at her, as if unable to believe what his eyes were seeing. Mother! My God, what happened to you? He asked, his voice laden with emotion. How did you end up like this? Marissa felt the tears streaming down her aged, suffering-marked face. She couldn't believe that, after all these years, she was reuniting with her son, but under such cruel and humiliating circumstances. I lost everything, Felipe, she responded, her voice trembling. My business, my marriage, my life. I had nowhere else to go. Felipe observed her, his face contorted in an expression of shock and disbelief. He approached Marissa slowly, as if afraid of breaking her. Mother, I can't believe this. How did you end up here, in these conditions? He shook his head, unable to comprehend the surreal situation before his eyes. Marissa simply lowered her gaze, ashamed. She felt so small and insignificant in that luxurious environment, surrounded by judgmental stares. I didn't mean to bother anyone, Felipe. I just wanted a little rest, she murmured, fearing her son's reaction. Felipe looked at her, his expression suddenly overcome by a wave of guilt and remorse. He had treated his own mother with such cruelty, without even recognizing her. Mother, forgive me, he said, his voice choked. I didn't know it was you. I I never imagined you could be going through something like this. Marissa lifted her eyes, meeting her son's repentant gaze. In that moment, she felt her heart break, but also a glimmer of hope. As soon as Felipe recognized his mother, Marissa, silence fell over the restaurant hall. All eyes turned to the scene, surprise and shock etched on every face. The man who had moments earlier assaulted Marissa retreated, his demeanor changing from rage to disbelief. But, how? This woman is your mother. He stammered, his eyes wide. Felipe nodded, gently holding Marissa's arm, as if afraid of hurting her. Yes, this is my mother, he confirmed, his voice laden with emotion. I didn't recognize her. God, what have I done? Marissa lowered her head, ashamed. She could feel all the eyes on her, judging her, analyzing her. This situation was so humiliating, so painful. Mother, forgive me, Felipe pleaded, holding Marissa's hands in his. I didn't know it was you. I was so cruel. Some of the people present began whispering to each other, shocked by the revelation. So this beggar is the owner's mother, murmured an elegantly dressed woman, incredulous. My God, how is that possible? Questioned another patron, shaking his head in disbelief. Marissa shrank even further into her chair, the feeling of humiliation consuming her from within. She wanted to disappear from there, to flee from all those judgmental stares. But Felipe, with a deeply saddened expression, knelt beside Marissa, holding her trembling hands. Mother, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice choked. I didn't know, I couldn't see that it was you. I was a monster to you. Tears streamed down Marissa's aged face, and she squeezed her son's hands between hers. My son, she whispered, I just wanted a little rest. I didn't want to cause any trouble. The atmosphere in the restaurant was tense and charged with emotion. All present seemed paralyzed, shocked by the unexpected revelation. The image of the powerful businesswoman they knew clashed brutally with the homeless woman before them. And amidst it all, Felipe was overcome by a wave of remorse and guilt, realizing how much he had failed his own mother. After the shocking revelation that this ragged woman was actually the owner's mother, Felipe was completely bewildered. He looked at Marissa, his expression taken over by deep pain and regret. Mother, what have I done to you? He murmured, gently holding her hands. How could I have let it come to this? Marissa simply shook her head, her eyes filled with tears. It wasn't your fault, my son. I lost everything. I had nothing left. Felipe felt his heart tighten at the sight of his mother's condition. This strong and resilient woman he knew seemed so fragile and helpless. He knew he needed to act quickly to help her. Mother, you're not spending another minute on those streets, he stated firmly. I'm taking you home, I'm going to take care of you. I won't let you continue in this situation. Marissa looked at him, her eyes wide. But, Felipe, I can't go back. I have nothing, I have no way to start over. Her son shook his head vehemently. No, Mother. You have me. And I'll do everything to help you get back on your feet. He turned to the other staff present. Bring a wheelchair, she needs urgent medical care. Within minutes, Marissa found herself carefully being placed in a wheelchair, her son by her side, holding her hand firmly. She couldn't believe what was happening. After so much time alone and helpless, her son had returned to rescue her. Felipe, I don't know what to say, she stammered, tears streaming down her aged face. He looked at her with tear-filled eyes, a sad smile on his lips. Don't say anything, Mother. Just let me take care of you now. You're going to be all right, I promise. Marissa nodded, squeezing her son's hand. After so many years of suffering and loneliness, she finally felt she had a reason to start over. With Felipe's help, perhaps she could regain her dignity and rebuild her life. With Felipe by her side, Marissa was quickly taken out of the restaurant and ushered into a comfortable limousine. She still felt disoriented and confused, barely able to believe that her son had finally found her. "You're going to be okay, Mother," Felipe reassured her, holding her hand as the car took them to his home. "I'm going to take care of you, give you all the support you need." Marissa nodded, tears streaming down her aged face. After years of despair and loneliness on the streets, she finally felt a glimmer of hope. Upon arriving at Felipe's imposing residence, Marissa was gently placed in a cozy room, where a medical team was waiting. "Gentlemen, please do everything you can for my mother," Felipe instructed, his voice heavy with concern. "She needs urgent care." The doctors examined Marissa carefully, shocked by the debilitated state she was in. Dehydrated, malnourished, and with various health issues, she would require extensive recovery. "We'll do our best to stabilize her," one of the doctors assured Felipe. "But it will be a long road." In the following days, Marissa underwent a series of tests and treatments. Her dedicated and attentive son never left her side, tending to her well-being at every moment. "You're going to get better, Mother," he reassured her, holding her hand tenderly. "I won't let anything bad happen to you ever again." Gradually, Marissa began to recover, both physically and emotionally. She still felt a pang of shame and insecurity, but her son's constant presence helped her feel increasingly confident. "I don't even know how to thank you for all of this, Felipe," she said, her voice weak but laden with gratitude. "You saved me." Felipe smiled, caressing his mother's face. "You don't need to thank me, Mother. I just want to have you back in my life." Together, they devised a plan for Marissa to rebuild her life. With Felipe's financial and emotional support, she began to re-establish herself, gradually regaining her dignity and identity. As Marissa recovered under the care of her son Felipe, her harrowing story was gradually revealed. A tale of unexpected setbacks that had led her to this tragic situation. "Mother, please tell me what happened," Felipe pleaded, gently holding her hand. "I need to understand how you ended up in this situation." Marissa sighed deeply, her eyes brimming with tears. "Son, I lost everything. My business, my money, my marriage. It all crumbled bit by bit." She then began to recount the painful journey that had consumed her. First, the diagnosis of an aggressive cancer that left her debilitated for months. "I fought with all my strength, but the illness weakened me so much." While Marissa was battling for her life, her business partner, in whom she had placed blind trust, started embezzling money from the company. "He betrayed me, he stole everything I had built with so much effort." By the time Marissa finally recovered, it was too late. Her business had collapsed, and she had lost everything. "I felt so powerless, so devastated. Everything I loved had disappeared." And if that wasn't enough, her marriage also came to an end amidst a bitter and painful divorce. "My husband abandoned me, he took everything. I had nothing left." Felipe listened in silence, his heart breaking with each new revelation. "Mother, I can't believe it. How did you endure all of this alone?" Marissa averted her gaze, her voice faltering. "I had no one else, my son. My family, my friends. I lost it all." She then recounted how, with no money, no home, and no support, she ended up on the streets, fighting for survival. "I begged for help, but no one seemed to see me. Until I reached that restaurant, desperate for a little rest. Felipe embraced her tightly, tears streaming down his face. "Mother, I'm so sorry. I should have been there for you. I never imagined you were going through something so terrible." Marissa returned the hug, her heart filling with relief and gratitude to finally have her son back. "It wasn't your fault, my son. Now you're here, and that's all that matters." After Marissa's surprising story came to light, the news spread quickly through the local and national media. The former successful businesswoman who had fallen on hard times, only to be rescued by her own son, touched the hearts of many. "It's such a moving story," commented a reporter during an interview with Felipe. "How did Mrs. Marissa manage to overcome so many misfortunes and is now rebuilding her life?" Felipe frowned, still visibly shaken by his mother's situation. "My mother is an extraordinary woman. Despite everything she's been through, she never lost her strength and dignity. Now we're working together so that she can start anew." The reports about Marissa soon went viral on social media, generating a wave of empathy and solidarity. People from all over the city and even from other regions reached out, wanting to know how they could help. "This story made me cry," commented a follower on the news profile. "No one should have to live through such a tragic situation. I hope Mrs. Marissa receives all the support she needs to get back on her feet." Many others made spontaneous donations, from clothes and food to money to help cover Marissa's medical and housing costs. The entire community seemed united around this cause. Even local authorities mobilized, wanting to honor the resilient Marissa. "She is an example of strength and resilience for all of us," declared the city mayor. "We will recognize the incredible journey of this woman and do everything we can to support her." In a moving ceremony, Marissa was honored as a community hero, receiving various awards and tributes. She could barely believe that, after so many years of suffering and anonymity, her story had touched so many people. "I just want the chance to start over," Marissa said, visibly moved, during her acceptance speech. "And to be able to help other people going through difficulties, just as I was once helped." Marissa's words echoed through the hall, eliciting applause and tears from everyone present. In that moment, she felt finally recognized and valued, ready to write a new chapter in her life. After Marissa's rescue by her son Felipe, the family she had lost sight of during her years on the streets began to reconnect with her. The story of her fall and subsequent rebuilding had spread through the city, touching the hearts of many. One day, Marissa received an unexpected call from her daughter, Julia, who lived in another city. "Mother. Oh my God, is that really you?" Julia exclaimed, her voice choked with emotion. "I saw the news and I can barely believe it." Marissa felt her heart race upon hearing her daughter's voice. "Julia, my dear." "Yes, it's me. I can hardly believe I'm talking to you." The two women broke down in tears on the phone, the years of distance and longing overflowing in their voices. "Mother, please forgive me for not being there for you," Julia pleaded, guilt evident in her tone. "I should have looked for you, I should have done something." Marissa shook her head, even though Julia couldn't see. "No, my daughter. It's not your fault. I got lost, and I didn't want to bother you." After that call, Julia wasted no time in traveling to reunite with her mother. The two embraced tightly, tears of relief and redemption streaming down their faces. "I missed you so much, Mother," Julia whispered, caressing Marissa's face. "Now you're back, and nothing will separate us again." Marissa smiled, feeling her heart swell with happiness. "My daughter, I've missed you so much too. I'm so grateful to have you all back in my life." Gradually, other family members also reached out, wanting to reconnect with Marissa. Her grandchildren, who barely remembered her, now welcomed her with affectionate hugs and tears of joy. "Grandma, we missed you so much," exclaimed her youngest granddaughter, clinging to her legs. "We'll never let you go again." Deeply moved, Marissa returned each embrace, her heart overflowing with love. After so many years of loneliness, she finally had her family back, the bond that had sustained her during the worst of times. "My dear ones, I don't even know how to thank you for welcoming me back," she said, her eyes shining with happiness. "You are all I have." Together, they began to rebuild the bonds and make plans for the future. Marissa felt that with the unconditional support of her family, she could finally leave the past behind and look towards tomorrow with hope. After the emotional reunion with his mother and the reconstitution of family ties, Felipe was deeply touched and reflective about all that Marissa had endured. One evening, during an intimate dinner, Felipe spoke up, his face heavy with seriousness. "Mother, I need to tell you something," he began, gently holding Marissa's hand. "This experience you went through has made me reflect deeply on the importance of empathy and compassion." Marissa looked at him attentively, her eyes full of expectation. "I feel so guilty for not being there for you when you needed me the most," Felipe continued, his voice strained. "I was so blind, so insensitive. And I almost lost you forever." He took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "But now I understand. I understand how important it is to look around us and see the people who are suffering, even if they don't ask for help. I can't let other people go through what you went through." Marissa squeezed her son's hand, her eyes shining with pride. "Son, I know you did the best you could with the information you had at the time. Don't blame yourself anymore." Felipe nodded, but his expression was still serious. "Mother, I want to change this. I want to use my position and resources to help other people in vulnerable situations, just as I helped you." He paused, looking at Marissa with determination. "From today on, I will create a program to provide shelter, medical care, and support so that no one has to go through the same ordeal you faced." Marissa felt tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by an indescribable emotion. "Oh, Felipe, my son," she whispered, embracing him tightly. "You make me so proud. Together, we will change the lives of so many people." In that moment, Felipe knew his mission would be to honor his mother's resilience and strength, using his influence and resources to make a difference in the lives of those who needed it most. After the heartfelt conversation with her son Felipe, Marissa felt a new fire ignite within her. Her own journey of overcoming had shown her how important it was to offer help to those in the same desperate situation she had found herself in. "Son, I want to do something to help other people like me," she declared, the determination shining in her eyes. "I know how difficult it is, how desolate it is to be on the streets with no one to lend a hand." Felipe nodded, holding Marissa's hand affectionately. "I've been thinking about that too, Mother. And I want to do everything in my power to support your initiative." Together, they began to map out an ambitious plan. First, Marissa wanted to create a safe and comfortable shelter where homeless people could find a roof, food, and basic care. "So many times I begged for a place to shelter me from the cold and rain," she recalled, her voice slightly trembling. "I want no one to have to go through that." Additionally, Marissa intended to provide access to medical and psychological services, so that the shelter residents could recover both physically and emotionally. Many of them face serious health issues, either due to lack of care or from the life on the streets, she explained. "I want to be able to give them the support I needed myself." And it didn't stop there. Marissa also wanted to create professional training programs and job search assistance, so that the shelter residents could have the opportunity to rebuild their lives in a dignified and independent way. "No one chooses to live this way," she stated with conviction. "They just need a chance, someone who believes in them." Felipe listened intently, his heart swelling with pride with every word from his mother. "Mother, I will do everything in my power to make this dream a reality," he promised. "Together, we will change the lives of so many people." Marissa hugged him tightly, a lone tear sliding down her face. "Thank you, my son. I know that with your help, we can make a difference." In that moment, Marissa felt stronger and more determined than ever. Her own experience had shown her the power of hope and resilience. Now, she would use that strength to help others find the same path to a fresh start. Determined to rebuild her life in a safe and dignified way, Marissa met with her son Felipe to outline a detailed plan for her future. "Son, I want to be certain that my life will be stable and protected from now on," she said, determination in her gaze. "I need a safe place to live, access to medical care, and job opportunities." Felipe nodded, his expression full of understanding and dedication. "I know, Mother. And I will make sure you have everything you need to start over with peace of mind." Together, they began to map out a step-by-step plan. First, Marissa was referred to a specialized clinic, where she would receive medical care and necessary treatments to regain her health. "I need to make sure you are in full physical and emotional condition," explained Felipe. "I don't want anything left unresolved as we build your future." Marissa agreed, relieved to have the unconditional support of her son. "I trust you, Felipe. I know you will take care of me the way I always have for you." In parallel, they began to search for a comfortable and secure accommodation for Marissa to settle into. Nothing too luxurious, but a place that would give her the privacy and stability she so desperately needed. "I don't want anything extravagant," Marissa emphasized. "Just a simple home that I can call my own." Felipe nodded, already making some inquiries and contacts. "I understand, Mother. I will find the perfect place for you, you can count on it." And finally, they discussed the employment opportunities Marissa could have, based on her skills and previous experiences. "I want to go back to work, son," Marissa declared, her voice firm. "I don't want to be dependent on anyone. I want to regain my independence." Felipe smiled, proud of his mother's determination and strength. "I know that, Mother. And I will use all my connections to help you find a job that is perfect for you." As the days passed, Marissa saw her plan materialize, step by step. She felt a wave of relief and hope growing in her chest. Finally, her life was stabilizing, and she had her son by her side to support her on this journey of a new beginning. After re-establishing herself with the support of her son Felipe, Marissa felt an increasingly strong impulse to revive her old passion for philanthropy. After all, she had gone through so many trials and tribulations, and now she wanted to use her experience and resources to help other people in vulnerable situations. "Son, I need to do something to help those who are going through what I went through," Marissa declared, her gaze shining with determination. "I know how difficult and desperate it is to be on the streets, with no one to lend a hand." Felipe nodded, smiling with pride in his mother. "I know, Mother. And I will do everything in my power to support your initiative." Together, they began to map out an ambitious plan. First, Marissa wanted to create a safe and welcoming shelter, where homeless people could find refuge, basic care, and access to essential services. "So many times I begged for a place to shelter me from the cold and rain," she recalled, her voice heavy with emotion. "I want no one to have to go through that again." Additionally, Marissa intended to provide medical care and psychological support to the shelter residents, so they could recover both physically and emotionally. Many of them face serious health issues, whether physical or mental, she explained. I want to be able to give them the support I needed and didn't have. And it didn't stop there. Marissa also wanted to create vocational training programs and assist in the job search, so that the shelter residents could have the opportunity to rebuild their lives in a dignified and independent way. No one chooses to live this way, she stated with conviction. They just need a chance, someone who believes in their potential. Felipe listened attentively, his heart swelling with pride at every word from his mother. Mother, I will put all my resources and connections at the service of this initiative of yours, he promised, holding Marissa's hands tenderly. Together, we will change the lives of so many people. Marissa hugged him tightly, a lone tear sliding down her face. Thank you, my son. I know that with your help, we can make a difference in the lives of those who need it most. And so, Marissa reignited her passion for philanthropy, guided by her own experience of overcoming. She became an inspiration to many, showing that even in the face of the harshest adversities, it is possible to rebuild one's life and help others. After months of dedication and hard work, Marissa finally saw her dream come to fruition. The shelter she had created to help the homeless was ready and operating at full capacity, offering shelter, medical care, and employment opportunities to dozens of individuals who had previously had nowhere to turn. In an emotional inaugural ceremony, Marissa addressed all those present, her face radiant with pride and gratitude. A few months ago, I found myself in that same desperate and abandoned situation, she began, her voice firm and inspiring. But thanks to the love and support of my son Felipe, I was able to rebuild my life. She paused, her eyes shining with restrained tears. And now, it is with a heart full of hope that I can offer the same chance to so many other people who are lost and helpless. The attendees, which included old friends, family, and community leaders, listened in silence, visibly moved. Marissa then turned to Felipe, who watched her with pride and admiration. My son, I can never thank you enough for believing in me and extending a hand when I needed it most, she said, holding his hands tenderly. Without warning, Marissa surprised everyone by kneeling before Felipe, in a demonstration of deep respect and gratitude. I ask you, my son, to accept this shelter in your name, she declared, her voice choked with emotion. May it be a legacy of your love and your faith in me. Felipe was dumbfounded, tears streaming down his face. He knelt beside Marissa, enveloping her in a tight hug. Mother, I have no words, he whispered. This shelter is the greatest proof of your incredible heart. I accept it with all my love and gratitude. The audience broke into applause and cheers, moved by that emotional and meaningful scene. Everyone there could witness Marissa's transformation, from a homeless woman to an inspiring benefactor, guided by the love and support of her son. In that moment, the family bonds were reaffirmed in a deep and lasting way. Marissa and Felipe knew that together, they could continue to make a difference in the lives of so many others who needed an opportunity.